started thinking about myself and getting hit. And when I thought about that, when I had Axel, and now I'm like, holy shit, I was hit. And I look down and I can see this big hole in my my uniform shirt. My stomach sank. I don't know. I was like, holy fuck, am I dying? Like, how bad am I hurt? I wasn't feeling anything really. And I've heard of horror stories of guys getting shot and they don't even know that they're shot, but like, you know, you can still die. And so so then I'm thinking the worst. So I start ripping my uniform off. My vest is shredded.
So the most recent shooting you were in, you said you had a dog with you on that shooting too, where it almost the guy or guys, I don't know how many people it was, but shot your dog at point blank or tried to shoot your dog.
Yeah, and shot me.
And shot you. Was that Dax, the same dog that you had on the knife call?
No, this is Axel, my second dog, which I still have him at home.
What breed?
He's a German Shepherd, just an all black German Shepherd.
German Shepherd, Axel. How did this shooting go down, and where did it happen?
So so I was I had actually just got to work, and I responded to an alarm call. Basically, a couple patrol guys went to an alarm call, showed up. Some dude is like coming out of this business, like, you know, they thought he's burglarizing it, and then goes back inside.
So commercial alarm then? Okay.
Yeah, commercial building. It's July 7 o'clock at night, and so obviously the sun is still out. It's daytime hours. And my buddy who had mentioned that was in the first shooting with me, Nate, he was also a dog handler, and he responded over to this alarm call where this guy was inside. So I go over there to help out, and it was his turn to deploy the dog. And so I'm like, hey, I'll just go to the back, while he took his search team inside to go find this guy. And I brought a brand new officer with me, Joe. Joe's his name. He had just got off training that week. So he's like brand
so
new.
not a ride along. He's in it.
No, this is an actual cop, yeah.
Fresh off of ride along.
He's in it, yeah. Yep, he works for us. So, but he's fresh off training. Okay. And so I grab him and I'm like, hey dude, let's go to the backup in case this dude squirts out the back. We'll be back there with my dog Axel. And I'm just talking to him while they're doing the search. I'm like, basically, here's how you work around a dog. This is how you not get bit by the dog, kind of going over that with him. And dispatch airs over the radio. They're like, hey, we're getting reports of, possible shots fired in the mall parking lot. Well, the mall parking lot was literally right across the street from where we were. So all I had to do was cross one major roadway and I'm in the parking lot of the mall. And the call was so vague. It was like, the caller wasn't sure if it was a gun. It could have been a cell phone that he put in his pocket. It was like, really? But they heard what sounded like a gunshot. So, they give a description of him. It was a white male, backpack, black and white striped shirt. So a little bit of time goes on and I'm like, you know what? This is in 2019. I'm like, with all the mass shootings and everything that had been going on, I'm like, we should probably go to this call, because if it ends up being something, we don't want to not go to that. Right. So I told Joe, I was like, hey, you want to go with me? And he's like, yeah, we'll go over there. So I radioed to Nate or whatever. He's just finishing up the search too. They couldn't find this guy. And I'm like, hey dude, we're going to go to this call. And he's like, yeah, cool. We're wrapping this up. We'll be over there in a minute. So Joe and I we cross the street. We're in the parking lot. And I'm driving and I'm reading the text of the call. And I look up and I see the guy, and he's on the freaking other end of the mall parking lot, but he's like sprinting, full sprint towards this JCPenney store. And in my head, I thought, well, that's super weird that it's freaking July. It's hot as hell out. He had this like long sleeve shirt on with a backpack, and he's full sprint.
This dude's not just working out in the middle of a JCPenney parking lot.
No, absolutely not. So I'm like, that's really weird. And my initial thought was, I don't want him to get in the mall because I don't want to have to chase this guy through the mall. Like we've had to do that before, and that's a nightmare. So We throw on our lights and sirens to distract him, and it actually ends up working. He actually looks up. He sees us now. He's still quite a distance ahead of us, and he turns around and now he's running the opposite way that he came. And so, at the one end of the mall parking lot, there was a Red Robin restaurant, a tire shop, and some other businesses. And he's running towards those businesses. Well, I'm like maneuvering in my car trying to catch up with him. Joe's behind me, and he ends up running out onto a major roadway, and he's kind of just like jogging down the sidewalk. And I pull out on the roadway, and he's not stopping. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to use my car. I'll cut him off, get out of the car, and go from there. And I'd already, based on the call, and I was getting more information, another caller had called in and said that they were almost certain that they saw him had a gun. He had put it in his pocket and whatever. So I had already gone through my mental checklist of like, am I going to deploy my dog Axel on this guy if he doesn't stop running? And I already made up my mind that I was, just based on the circumstance. So it was really weird. He's on the sidewalk. I cut him off with my car. I get out, and I always was good about using my car as cover between me and another person. And luckily I did that. So I get out of my car and I'm like, hey dude. And he stops and he's just like, gives me this like 1,000-mile look stare on his face, which immediately was like a red flag to me. And I'm like, hey, get down on the ground. And I got my gun out, and he doesn't do anything. He just stares at me for a minute. And I'm like, hey, get down on the ground, dude. You're going to get bit by the dog. And he's just staring at me.
So is he moving or anything when he's staring at you? Like literally just a stone cold stare?
No. Just a stone cold stare like that. Have you ever looked at someone and they just have that like 1,000-mile stare look on their face where they're like looking through you?
Yeah, like there's nothing behind their eyes. They're just,
there's nothing there. Yeah. And so he's looking at me like that, and which made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And I'm like, okay, what the hell? This probably only happened for probably 3 to 5 seconds. And then without even saying anything, he just turns and starts running back the opposite direction that he just came. So I circle around the car, I get the dog out, and I'm yelling at him, stop, he's going to get bit. And I deploy Axel because he doesn't stop. So right as I deploy the dog, and this is all on video, as I deploy the dog, Axel's now closing the gap on him. I see the guy. I'm now running behind the dog. And mind you, we're on the sidewalk. Joe now, he's getting out of his car. And as the dog goes to bite him, he pulls a .357 Magnum out of his front waistband, and he turns back towards me, and he starts firing the gun. And one of the first rounds that he fired, I think it hit the sidewalk and ricochets up and hit me in the vest. But nonetheless, it hits me in the vest on my left side of my ribs. I feel that, which felt like somebody punched you like super hard in the rib cage. So I think in my mind I knew what had just happened, that I'd been hit. But I'm now shooting back at this guy.
And you're wearing a vest?
The dog now, I'm wearing a vest, yeah, luckily. The dog goes to bite him at this point. He sees the dog, and as Axel goes to bite him in the arm, he point blank just boom, fires a round right at his face. And like the dog goes backwards out into traffic, and I completely lose sight of him. And in the moment I thought, holy shit, he just killed my dog. Like there's a lot of things going through my mind. Like I got really sad. Like I thought I just got my dog killed. I mean, those dogs are like your kids.
And you might have just been shot.
Yeah. And honestly, that wasn't even going through my mind. I couldn't believe that he just killed my dog. And so I'm still firing at him. And I'm lucky the dog was there because I could tell his change of behavior. The suspect, he was more concerned about getting bit by the dog than he was being shot. And one of my rounds, actually in the video, you see it hits him in the backpack. And I remember seeing this in real life. Like I saw this like big poof of like, it ended up being water, but like this spray of something. And I thought I had hit him, but he ends up circling around, and then now he's running up this like dirt embankment towards this tire shop.
Was he wearing like it was like a protein shaker bottle or something that you hit?
Yeah, dude. It was a metal
water canister. Yeah.
The freaking bullet hit it, and it deflected the round, and it completely blew the water canister up. So what you see in the video is all the water spraying out. Bam. It's kind of crazy.
So you see this dude, you nailed him in the back, and you're just like, fuck, metal on metal shit, just deflected it. Yeah. So now he keeps running.
He's still running. He's still shooting. I have zero cover. There's no cover to take. I am in the wide open. So I see as he's running up this dirt embankment, I'm still firing at him. Joe now has basically caught up with me, and he's starting to now fire at him. And out of nowhere, I see my dog in my peripheral, and this like white or this like black blurb just in my peripheral, and jump up and bite this guy behind some bushes. And he grabs him by the calf, and he yanks this dude down. And now I lose sight of him because they're behind these bushes. And I'm like, I think in my head, I was like, holy shit, was that my dog? And I now run up to the guy, and I see Axel's biting him in the leg. And the dude sits up in a seated position, and I'm now within probably 3 or 4 feet of the guy. And I'm like, I'm still shooting. And then, so now in that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to fucking shoot my dog now, because now the dog is on the dude, and he sits up and he points the gun right at me. And I remember like looking at that barrel, and in my mind, I'm like, God, fuck, that's a big gun. Like, I'm going to get shot. I thought for sure like that was it for me. I'm like, yeah, he's going to kill me. And, I'm going to have to shoot and kill my dog and try to put this guy down. Which was tough because, like I said, I initially thought the dog was dead already. Now he's back. Now he's biting the guy. And having to kill your own dog, that's not ideal. That's actually a hard thing to grasp in your own head. So I'm like, whatever. I start shooting at him. He fires one round, and I remember it being like super loud and like feeling the percussion of this 357 Magnum. And the round goes like past my head and blows out the window behind me. And he freaking shoots another round, which also goes by my head and hits the side of the building. And luckily, my shots were effective, hit him. He goes down. I run, another patrol car pulls up right at this time, and I run out in the street. I'm out of ammo. I take cover behind the patrol car. The dog's still biting him. I think I've shot the dog now, because now I can't even see him. He's behind the bushes. I'm yelling at the dog. He's not coming back. So I'm like, okay, he's dead. I reload my gun, and as I take cover behind the car, I can still see the guy. I can probably see like maybe his stomach up, and he still has the gun in his hand, and he's still like maneuvering around. So I shoot another round, which goes off, and then my gun goes click, and which is not a good sound in a gunfight when your gun goes click and not bang. So I quickly do, like the whole, my gun's jammed. So I do the whole tap rack, get back in battery. And I was able to end up firing a couple more rounds, and now I don't see the guy. Now he's not moving at all. I still can't see my dog. He's still not coming back. I tell Joe, I'm like, fuck, the dog's dead. We're trying to get resources there. Obviously, we're putting all this out on the radio. And I have my e-collar on my the remote on my belt, and I'm just sitting there. I'm hitting the E to try to get Axel to come back.
So it's a shock thing?
Yeah, he's got an e-collar on his neck. And so I'm trying to hit that. I'm trying to get him to come back, and he's not coming back. And so, I'm just thinking the worst. And I tell Joe that. And I'm like, shit, but we don't want to run up to this guy because I don't know what his status is. And I don't know, I bet you probably 30 seconds, 45 seconds goes by, which seemed like an eternity. And you can see in the video, Axel comes out from behind the bushes, and like, dude, his tail is like, his tail's tucked down, his ears are kind of down, and he's like kind of like doing this like gait. And you could tell that he's freaking wigged out. And I'm like, oh my God, he's alive. So I quickly call him over to me. I grab him and he's just like covered in blood. So then I'm thinking, okay, he's shot, but he's not dead. The other handler, Nate, now he's on scene. And I'm like, dude, we got to get him to the vet. But before I do that, I now started thinking about myself and getting hit. And when I thought about that, when I had Axel and now I'm like, holy shit, I was hit. And I look down and I can see this big hole in my my uniform shirt. My stomach sank. Like, I don't know. I was like, holy fuck, am I dying? Like, how bad am I hurt? I wasn't feeling anything really. And I've heard of horror stories of guys getting shot and they don't even know that they're shot, but like, you know, you can still die. And so so then I'm thinking the worst. So I start ripping my uniform off. My vest is shredded and the round that hit me ends up falling on the ground and the vest had stopped it. So I was like, holy shit, I'm good. You know, like I take my vest off. I'm like checking myself. I had a partner there. They're checking me. And it was at that point where I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like I need to get the dog to the vet because I didn't want him to die. So we end up throwing him in my car. Nate drove. We left his car and dog there. And yeah, we freaking blasted off to the vet, gave him a forewarning that we were coming. We showed up and they scanned the dog and the vet was like, hey, he wasn't hit. Or he had an injury to his muzzle. It took like a chunk of his skin and like burned his muzzle. And I think that was from the first round the guy shot at him point blank. I think the round skimmed off his nose and it burned his face.
Wow. So he somehow that he just like, missed like, yeah.
Just got super lucky, dude. Like that guy failed in every way that day. He couldn't kill the dog. He couldn't kill me. Like, I would chalk that up to being a failure.
And he's dead. Biggest fail.
And he's
or did he die?
He ended up, dying. Yeah, he died on scene. So they tell me he wasn't shot, and I go and I'm like argumentative. I'm like, no bullshit. I'm like check him again. You know, I wasn't believing her. They did, and she's like, hey, I think the blood that's on him is from the bad guy, and I'm like, fuck. I was like, holy crap. Just if all the stars could have lined up that day, I think everything worked out in our favor. I mean, I probably should be dead, to be honest. The guy shot at me point blank from just a few feet away twice.
So when he missed and one shot hit the window and the other shot hit the building, he was like 3 feet away from you, 4 feet away from you.
Oh yeah. Yep. And just seated down and yeah, just cranked off a couple rounds at me. So for sure got lucky. But you know, and I've had people ask like, oh, why did you run up, you know, and shoot, you know, get that close to him? And it's like, well, I had nowhere else to go. And it's like, dude, he's just like aimlessly firing his gun. He almost shot an innocent citizen in her car. Something had to be done. And, you know, the only way to do that is to bring the fight to him. So that's just what I did. But I ended up going to the hospital after that. Because I had to go make sure that I was okay. So they gave me my freaking heart rate, I guess, was so high that they had to like give me some drugs to bring it down because it was like spiking and they were concerned. And that was actually the last day. One of my buddies who worked at a neighboring agency, heard this all come out. He happened to be working. He showed up at the hospital and I remember hearing his voice in the hall, like, where's my buddy? He thought I was, he thought I was seriously hurt. And the nurse is like, hey, you can't go in there. And dude, there's like media that starts to show up to stuff like that. Like, so they don't want anybody in there and, to protect me. And I heard my buddy's voice. He's basically told the nurse to go fuck herself. He's like, no, I'm going in there. That's my friend. And I grew up with this guy. So he hung out in the hospital with me. He actually called my parents. I was there for a couple hours. He hung out. We parted ways. He was like, yeah, let's get a drink after, sometime this week. Like, he's like, dude, you're fucking crazy. Like, how does this always happen to you? And he ended up taking his life 7 days to the day of that shooting. He died.
He was on the force, or he was just a friend from...
He was a police officer. He worked at a neighboring agency. Yeah, than where I worked. So that whole event was... I don't think I ever really had time to process even what really happened to me that day, because when he died, I mean, all my energy, I think, went to that.
Yeah. I mean,
So that whole scenario I feel like I can't ever tell that story without sharing that part of it, because to me, like, that's a part of the story. Like, that's the last day I saw him. We spoke on the phone the day that he died. We were supposed to hang out and it didn't work out for reasons. So yeah, to me, man, like, that whole situation is like balled up into one story for me.
yeah, I mean, it makes sense that you didn't have time to process the shooting, because it's two completely traumatic events happening within a week of each other. You know, I
Yeah.
don't know if the human brain has the ability to pay equal enough or, full enough attention to two events like that normally, most people don't even experience, and it's happening within 7 days. So like that's completely wild. And
Yeah. The shooting was on a Tuesday, and that following Tuesday is when he took his life. I was actually supposed to go to to the debrief for my shooting the day that I found out at like 6 o'clock in the morning, when another one of our close friends was just blowing my phone up, woke me up and told me what had happened, which obviously I was devastated. And so I never even got to go to the debrief with everybody that was involved in that, because I was just so like emotionally just distraught in dealing with his death. That like, to me, dude, I don't think I've ever had like closure in that whole thing, to be honest with you.